Hello and welcome to the Naturopathic Vlog. My name is Jason Lee, Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine, and I'm inviting you to spend some time with me to talk about some tips on health and wellness. So today's topic is a big one, and it's something I've also wanted to do for a very, very long time. It's a massive topic, and again, I could spend many, many hours talking about this, but I'm going to try and break it down as easily as I can, and that's a topic around stress. Of all of the things out there, I see patients that come in with a wide variety of symptoms, a whole bunch of different symptoms, and you know, they have a saying that says there's a small amount of causes for a whole bunch of symptoms. And one of the big causes I've found in my practice, there's many, but the biggest one I find is stress. It's such a wishy-washy word. I mean, when people talk about stress, they're like, well, you know, they're just brushing me off. They just think it's nothing, like they think it's all in my head. And partly it's in people's heads, but there is a definite physiological reaction that happens with stress and stress on the body. Our body's like a car. I mean, the car can rev very, very fast. You know, sometimes it might rev to 6,000 RPM or whatnot. But that's only for a short term, right? You want to rev because you want to pass somebody, you press the accelerator, the car revs up, and then once you pass them, you bring it down, right? So the car is not designed to stay at high rev for a long period of time. And same as our body, right? Our body's meant for stress that goes up and it comes down, but it's not designed to just stay there in the highest gear for the longest time, revving at the highest rev rate, because eventually something's going to happen to the car. Something will break, you'll run out of oil, or the car will move into a state of dysfunction. So it's a huge thing. I mean, what does stress mean in the body? Stress basically means the body is trying to adapt to a normalcy, trying to adapt to what they call homeostasis. Homeostasis is kind of like the balance in the body. It's like when you're in a room, you want the temperature to be comfortable, so you move the temperature to where you want it to be, and then the heater comes on or the air conditioning comes on, it moves it to a temperature that we can tolerate. The body's the same way. It's always trying to adjust. It's always trying to adjust things in our body. It's adjusting our brain activity, it's adjusting our digestive function, it's adjusting our acid-base balance, it's adjusting a whole bunch of things. And our body normally can cope very easily with this. This is regulated by our adrenal glands. But in high stresses, the body can't adapt, and over time it moves to a state of disadaptation or disease. And that's where stress comes into play a role in that. So today we're going to talk about stress, some of the causes, and how it affects the body, and maybe some solutions. So when people talk about stress, it's interesting. They often right away go to things like, well, you know, my home life's fine. I love my job. I mean, my family's great. You know, financially things are okay. I don't really have any stress. I have nothing to be stressed out about. And these are what they call overt stresses. I mean, of course, it's great that those things are going well in your life. I mean, those things are awesome. But if you, let's say, are having, you know, job issues, family issues, you know, issues with the kids, issues with friends, who knows, that causes stress. Financial issues cause stress. All the pull causes stress. And that's a whole different topic we can go into of overt stress. But I need people to understand there's many other kinds of stress that are not overt. And these are called covert stresses. They're not the things in our environment that people gauge as far as stress goes. It's how we deal with things covertly. And a lot of this is very challenging to talk about because it's basically subconscious behavior, how we think about things, how we deal with things. Are you a worrier? Are we people that are trying to control our environment? And by controlling, we can control it by being overly nice, or controlling it by being aggressive towards people. Do we have issues with fears of the future? What could be? You know, the mind is very interesting, right? Because most animals have a small cerebral cortex, right, compared to their cerebellum. So the ratio is very, very small of the forebrain to the hindbrain. Humans have a large forebrain to a small hindbrain. So we were designed to think a lot. Like most animals don't have the ability to worry about things in the future. That's one trait that humans have that's allowed us to do a great many things, but it's also made us prone to being neurotic about things and being worried about things and stressed about things. And that creates a whole different level of stress in the body that our body wasn't designed for. The way I see it is almost like you take a very powerful car engine, like a 12-cylinder engine that's like, let's say, 1,000 horsepower, and you put it in a chassis that wasn't designed to drive that engine. So the engine's so powerful, it basically almost tears the car apart. And the human's brain is like that. It's a very powerful organ that's designed to think and think a lot. But our body isn't designed to deal with it. You know, one of my professors in physiology in university said, I think for our body to function really, really good, we need like an extra lobe in our lung, we need about an extra stomach to deal with all the foods that we eat that are not right, and we probably need about 10 adrenal glands just to deal with all the stress that we put our body under. Unfortunately, we only have 2 adrenal glands, and they're very, very small. So they're designed to help the body deal with stress, but not the intense stress that we put ourselves under. And a lot of it is the subconscious stresses, unfortunately, that drive our behavior, that create a lot of issues in our body, regardless if everything else is going great. And these are called covert stresses, and they're the ones that really affect the body. So I'm going to draw out a little bit of how stress works physiologically so you can kind of understand what it does to the body, and then we'll go over some things that it can do, okay? So what we have here is stress. Now, stress is a ubiquitous thing, but it affects so many systems in the body. I'm going to go over the systems so you understand how it works and how it affects the body and why it's such a detriment to our health. So you have stress over here, and we have two major nervous systems that it affects. The first one is called the somatic nervous system, and the second one is called the autonomic nervous system, okay? The somatic nervous system is basically, soma comes from the Latin term which means I person, I control. So if I want to point at somebody, if I want to make some weird hand gestures, if I want to move my hands or arms or whatever, I can control that. That's me physically controlling the body, under my control. The second nervous system is called the autonomic nervous system. Now this system is interesting. Autonomic means automatic. It happens whether you like it or not. So the breakfast I ate this morning is moving through my digestive system, and I don't really know what's going on in there. I have no idea how to control that. It's just happening whether I like it or not. I'm breathing right now as I'm talking, and even though I'm controlling my words with the somatic nervous system, the breathing is governed by the autonomic nervous system. Same with my heart rate. So autonomic means automatically controlled. Somatic means I control. The autonomic nervous system, here's what's interesting, is broken into two different systems as well. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response. That's the go, go, go hyperreactive system. And then we have the parasympathetic system, which is your relaxed system, your chill system kind of thing. So let's talk about what these systems do, because this is where it gets really, really interesting. And this is governed all by the autonomic nervous system, okay? So let's take the autonomic nervous system, the part we have no control over. We have sympathetic and parasympathetic. Ideally, we should be about 90% in the parasympathetic state, 10% in the sympathetic state. This is how it works. Why are we 90% in parasympathetic? Because that's when we reduce our blood pressure, we regulate our respiration rate, we sleep, we can rest, we can repair our tissues, our body's able to detoxify. We can secrete digestive enzymes to break down food. Our stomach works properly. Our pancreas works properly. Our gallbladder works properly to secrete bile to break down fat. Our digestion mobility and absorption rate is high because we're in a relaxed state. When we want to relax, we digest, we repair, we sleep. Kidney function is also fine too. The sympathetic system is very important as well. It's our fight or flight response. What happens in this response is when we respond to stress. Increased blood pressure, increased fight or flight response, constriction of the blood vessels, constriction of everything, muscle tension. Blood flows away from the digestive system, right? Because if you're being attacked by somebody, or you're in a stressful state, you don't want the blood sitting in your digestive system doing nothing but digesting food. You want the blood in your muscles because you want to fight or you want to flight. It's very, very important. This is all about survival. Our nervous system becomes hyper-agitated or hyper-aggressive. Our immune system becomes hyper-agitated or hyper-aggressive. So this is your going to war state. This is your relaxation state, okay? The problem is, and this is where the big issue comes into play with stress, is that in most people, sometimes some people, it's almost like they're 90% stuck in the sympathetic state and 10% stuck in the parasympathetic state, okay? So this is the problem. You switch the ratio, or it's 50-50 or whatever. So we spend more of our time in this state and very little time in this state. So if you're in a sympathetic state all the time, the body can't repair, it can't sleep, it can't detoxify, it can't digest properly. Now if that happens for a short amount of time, it's not that big of a deal. But if that happens all the time, it is a very big deal for the body. It's almost like if you clean your home, once a week, it's not so bad. If you clean your home once every 6 months, it's really, really bad. And the body will suffer from that, from breakdown, and you'll see a bunch of symptoms coming out, and we'll go over that in a minute. But this basically explains why stress is such a big deal. Because the part we can't control, which is the autonomic nervous system, governs how our body functions. And if we're stuck in a state of hyperagitation all the time, we are not doing all the things we need to do to have the body function properly. Okay, so let's talk about stress on the body. There's so many things I could talk about with this, but I tried to break it down into some major categories of things that I see a lot in practice that people may not realize are directly related to stress sometimes. First thing is digestive function. That is huge. I mean, when people are stressed, there are many ways that stress shows up in the body, but digestion is one of the biggest ones, either with constipation or diarrhea or a combination of both, and some people call that IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. So how does that work? When the system's under stress, the body cannot produce digestive enzymes. It's very difficult to do so. And in cases of shock, sometimes people actually have dry mouth because all the secretion just dries up like that. If you are not producing digestive enzymes, you are not breaking down food. You're not breaking down food properly at all. And by the time the food goes into the system, you have a double whammy because you're not digesting it properly and it goes into the system not broken down. Now inside the bowel is designed to absorb food, not break down. If it's not broken down up here, by the time it goes down here, you're gonna have some problems, and the bowel's like, what the heck am I gonna do with this? So it says, you know what, I'm not gonna do anything, and you get constipation because the bowel just doesn't want to do anything. Or the body says, you know what, that's it, get the heck out, I'm forcing it out, and you have a bowel movement that's like basically liquid. Sometimes people even see food coming out of the bowel that they ate. They're like, oh, look, there's a blueberry, look, there's, you know, a strawberry, or there's a piece of meat. I mean, these are bad signs saying you're not digesting food, and stress can be a major component of that. Number 2, insomnia. This is also huge. I mean, when people are stressed, they can't sleep. One of the main hormones that helps us sleep is a hormone called melatonin. And melatonin is basically trumped by cortisol and other kinds of stress hormones. The thing with hormones, you know, when people think of hormones, all a hormone really is a message. A message telling you something. And messages, I mean, we get messages all the time, and some messages are not that important, and some messages are very important. Of course, we respond to the ones that are very important first, and the ones that aren't so important, we'll respond to those later. And the body's the same way. Melatonin has a priority in this sequence, but cortisol is much higher. So if you're producing a lot of cortisol from stress, it is literally trumping your melatonin. It's almost like the cortisol is the royal flush and the melatonin is like triple aces. I mean, it's a great hand, but the royal flush always wins. So that's why when people are super stressed and producing tons of cortisol, you're actually trumping your own melatonin. And that way you can't sleep, because melatonin is a signal that tells your body to sleep. Okay, and that's why so many people suffer from insomnia during stress. Another big thing I see a lot of is headaches and pain syndromes. I mean, it makes sense, right? When we're stressed, our body naturally does this. We tense up all the time. And some people are chronically in a state of chronic tension like this all the time. They don't even realize it. You know, some patients will say, you know, I see my massage therapist and they try to work on me and they always tell me to relax, but I feel relaxed. And it's because they've been so stressed for so long, their idea of relax is like still tense. And when you're like that, it causes problems. If we tense up short term, no big deal. But a muscle that's tense for a long period of time creates lactic acid in that muscle, and that causes muscle tissue breakdown, and that causes scar tissue formation, and causes chronic pain. I mean, if you make a fist and you clench it, you can probably do that for a while, but at some point, it stays there for a long time. You're gonna have some pain, and then if you like, say, release that fist, you'll be like, I can't really release it, right? So if you're holding onto a bar or something like that and eventually you let go, it causes pain. And that's how people are all the time. The biggest areas of pain are usually the upper back, the traps, lower back, all these areas. And then of course that pulls on some of the fascia around the head, and you get headaches as well. Headaches in the temples, headaches in the side of the head, and headaches in the back of the head. So that's a huge issue from stress. Another issue is hormonal issues. The biggest ones I see is like menstrual irregularities, menstrual problems. And why is that? It's not that stress directly affects the hormone right away. Stress affects a whole series of things. Cortisol trumps estrogens, it trumps testosterone, it trumps progesterone. And I can go into how these hormones work, but basically when you're producing high amounts of cortisol from stress, you're literally stealing other hormones to make more cortisol, because cortisol is the #1 hormone for stress, which includes stealing progesterone. They call that a progesterone steal, stealing estrogen, things like that. So you're basically burning your hormones to make a stress hormone to keep you functioning in a stressful state that you're stuck in, and that causes a lot of problems. Stress also has a secondary effect because it affects your liver and affects how the liver metabolizes and breaks down things. So under a stress state, remember, when you're not in that relaxation state, you're in that sympathetic state, the liver cannot detoxify. And the liver detoxifies a lot of our hormones in the body, especially our estrogens and things like that. So when people are under high stress, they can't detoxify the estrogen, so it builds up in the system, causing hormonal toxicity. For some women, that leads to breast pains, PMS symptoms, mood issues, or menstrual irregularities and things like that. So stress can have a huge effect on that. Another area that people don't realize is stress affects atopic dispositions as well, like eczema, allergies, certain kinds of rash disorders and things like that. It's interesting to note that a lot of the treatments for these conditions, like let's say asthma, allergies, eczema, they use steroids, like actual steroid creams or steroid inhalers. What's interesting about these things is that they are steroid-based drugs that are basically based upon human natural cortisol, which is a steroid stress hormone. So think about that for a minute. You're using a cream that has a steroid in it, or a puffer that has a steroid in it to deal with your problem, that's derived from like a human stress hormone, which tells us there's a stress linked to these conditions as well. Another systemic thing that people see a lot of is high cholesterol. Cholesterol is a building block for many, many things, including cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So think about this. If you're under high stress and you're producing tons of cortisol, you need more cholesterol to make that cortisol. So the body's smart. It's like, okay, I need more cortisol, so I'm going to upregulate the production of cholesterol. So our cholesterol rises as a result of that. So that's a huge, huge thing too. Other simple things that people realize, of course, is when we're under stress, the blood pressure goes up, right? Because you're in that fight or flight response, that increases blood pressure for people. And it also drops our immune system, right, over time. Now, initially the stress response rallies the immune system, but over time it suppresses the immune system. That's why people who undergo chronic stress, they'll be able to do something and like do a job and work crazy late hours and whatnot, and just work. And then when that job is finished, then they get sick afterwards because the immune system just crashes because they push it too far. Another systemic thing that people will see with stress is acidic conditions. The more stressed we are, again, the more cortisol we produce. Cortisol is very acidic to the body. The more acidic the body becomes, the less oxygen we can carry, and the more acidic the body becomes, so we get tired. That's a big thing. The more acidic we are, the more fatigue we get, because less oxygen carrying capacity in the blood equals less oxygen to tissues equals more fatigue. But acidity also pulls minerals from tissues that are used to buffer that acid. So if you're pulling all these minerals from tissues to buffer the acid from the stress, those tissues suffer, and we have joint issues, joint pain, discomfort, and arthritis. And the last one, I mean, this is a huge one for a lot of people, and I think people subconsciously know this too, is weight gain. I mean, when we get stressed, people gain weight, and it makes sense, right? So if you are under stress financially, I mean, you're not going to go out and spend more money on things. Your natural inclination is to save money, right? And you want to save money in a place that you can kind of pull it fast if you need to. And for the body, that's belly fat. So when we're under stress, the body builds belly fat. Even though in our mind we're like, I don't want to gain this weight, it's really annoying me, it might even be stressing me out. But the thing is, we gain that weight to protect ourselves. The body doesn't care what you think. It cares about survival. And survival is storing fat in stress because the body needs that fat to survive. It needs that fat for energy. It needs that fat for fuel. So if we're under stress, our natural inclination is to store. So these are some of the ways that stress can show in the body. It's not exactly what you think. People think it's like people pulling their hair out and twitching their eyes and going crazy. It can show up in many, many different things systemically in the body, and it can produce a wide variety of symptoms. All right, so I guess this is the hard question. What can be done about this? I mean, this again is such a huge topic. It's not easy to cover in one small segment, but I mean, there's overt stresses in our life, like, you know, crazy work schedules, work demands, family demands, things like that. I mean, some of these we can control, some of them we can't. But there are a lot of things we do have control over that I think people can do right away that can help them. The first thing is to get off stimulants and suppressants. I mean, this is a huge thing I talk about people with, and that's coffee and alcohol. Again, once in a while is fine. Socially here and there is totally fine. But I mean, people use these things all the time. It's not uncommon to see patients that have 1, 2, 3 or more coffees in the morning just to wake up because their adrenal glands so weak in the morning they can barely get out of bed. So they use the caffeine or the coffee to get them going in the morning, so it stimulates the body, therefore burning out the adrenal. And that keeps them going during the day. And at night, people are so stressed, they need alcohol or some other kind of thing to bring them down at night. So you get this cycle of coffee in the morning, alcohol at night, coffee in the morning, alcohol at night. And what it does is it gets people through the day, but there's an expense. It burns out your adrenal gland even more, making you more prone to needing these things in the future. So my best advice is to get off the stimulants and get off the suppressants, because that'll help your adrenal gland recover. Another big thing is sleep. That's a huge, huge deal. The ideal time to sleep is between 8 hours, at night, and for some people they don't get that at all. And the best times to sleep, ideally, are somewhere around 10 to 11 at night and waking up by about 6 in the morning. So some people will go to bed at 2 in the morning, and they'll wake up at 9 and say, well, I got my hours of sleep because I slept in the right time. But it's the timing that's really important as well. That gets your circadian rhythm working well. It helps the adrenal gland restore itself at night. Dietary changes are huge. One of the biggest things that saps adrenal function is sugar. And it's a tough one, right? Because when people are stressed, they're not craving broccoli. They're craving Haagen-Dazs, they're craving, sponge cake or bread or something sugary, jam, juice. These are the things we crave. And it's sad that the things we crave the most when we're under stress are the things that kill us the most. And that's always a tough thing. So dietary changes, especially getting rid of processed foods, artificial coloring, junk like that, deep fried foods, and of course keeping the sugar as low as we can. The average North American eats almost 150 pounds of sugar per year, which is ridiculously crazy considering it used to be much less way back in the day. And this really, really fires our adrenal gland up. It also fires our pancreas up and puts a lot of stress on the body. And remember, with the body's stress, it's in that sympathetic state. It can't detoxify, it can't repair, and things go down the chute. So diet's really, really key. Exercise is also important. I know some people say, but when you exercise, you're releasing stress hormone. It's true, but it also helps to flush stress hormones out of the body as well. Exercise is great for taking your mind off things. It helps to relax you afterwards. And a good sweat is a fantastic way of just getting toxins out of the body. It doesn't have to be intense. It doesn't have to be super massive, rigorous type exercise. It could be just gentle stretching, yoga, going for a walk. Some people say, well, I walk around all day at work. That's my exercise, but I call that more stressful agitation. You're just kind of shuffling from one area to the other under stress. Better do it sometimes after dinner, when you get home, or something in the morning to help. Mindful meditation is huge, and I'll probably do a vlog on that separately. It's a fantastic tool to help to calm the mind and puts the body into that parasympathetic state. That's why meditation retreats and even just meditation you do at home helps so many people, because it switches that sympathetic mode into a parasympathetic mode and helps us get out of that stress state, which we're in 90% of the time, into that non-stress state, which we should be 90% of the time. There are a wide variety of supplements as well that can help. Certain adrenal supports, certain vitamins like B vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D. Magnesium is a great mineral that helps to regulate the adrenal gland, but again, better to see someone to get better advice on that that's more specific for you. For example, there are a lot of adrenal regulators out there that are stimulatory, and they can aggravate some people under high stress, and then there are some adrenal glands that are supplements that are more regulatory as opposed to stimulatory, and they're better for people. So it's not that every single supplement's the same, every adrenal supplement's the same, every B vitamin's the same. It's best to get the advice that's more specific to your case to deal with that. But those are some of the things that can be done. One of the things I saw this on social media, which I thought was interesting, is people that are doing these decluttering challenges where they're trying to declutter their life. That has a big effect on people too, as if you have a room that's all cluttered with stuff, that can create stress for people as well. So trying to change that environment, or there's other challenges where people are trying to basically simplify their life, to try to cut back on some of their extracurricular things and make it more simple, more family time, more time for themselves, which is fantastic. So these are some of the things that can be done. But it's such a big topic. I could literally spend hours talking about this. I myself, stress is a big part of my own personal case too. If I was honest with you about that. It's something I still struggle with and try and work with as well. So it's always a work in progress. But anyway, thanks for listening. This is the Naturopathic Vlog, and I'm signing out, and I'll see you next time. Take care.